Today was a day, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that the NFL Combine is everything for wide receivers. You know that I think that it does have a little importance, but not much with the receiver position in particular when we're talking fantasy football. But we would like to see big wide receivers. We would like to see fast wide receivers. I mean, I would rather not have every single one of these guys come out, be pretty damn small, at least smaller than we thought, be pretty damn slow, at least slower than we thought. We have some very glaring concerns, some players that may look like outliers on this list. So I didn't expect to be making too many adjustments from the NFL Combine, but we actually have a few names moving up and down this list, as much as I hate to admit. But before we get into it, drop a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to go out there and actually draft some of these rookies today in a fantasy football draft, Underdog not only has launched their 2023 Big Board Draft Contest, which includes these rookies, which is a $1 million prize pool, but they also launched their Rookies and Sophomore Draft Tournament, which you can find in every single state pretty much. And when you use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100 with the link in the live chat, comment section, description. But I think that should be about it. Let's dive into these rankings, starting off with someone who did not run today, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, if you're going to be looking at JSN, he was my wide receiver one coming in because production with context, it's everything at wide receiver. In his sophomore year, he broke out. You've heard me say it. Garrett Wilson, Olave on the same roster. He averages 123 receiving yards per game and accounts for 32% of this Ohio State's passing offense on a per game basis. He was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school. Don't really need to see anything else. He just turned 21 years old, but we actually do get official size numbers for JSN. He's 6 foot, 196 pounds. Now, of course, he doesn't run the 40-yard dash. And am I going to be holding this against him? Nope. Because when I ranked him at 1 previously, I ranked JSN at 1 under the assumption he would be slow. That he's not going to be a field stretcher. He's not going to be a burner. He's going to be a wide receiver operating underneath, volume. You're tired of hearing me say it. The man had an impeccable testing score. If you're going to be looking at the agility drills, I mean, he was #1 at the combine with the 3-cone. Honestly, doesn't really matter too much. What matters is his production he had on the field, and where he did test, he excelled. We'll see his 40-yard dash at his pro day, and it will be slow, so just prepare yourself. Now, going over to 2, we used to have Jordan Addison, but after today, I don't know if I can do it. We are going to go through and put Quentin Johnston here now, another wide receiver that didn't run the 40, and with Johnston, it wasn't a great day either, if we're going to be honest. I mean, this is a wide receiver that we were told was 6'4", 220, but just like I try to tell my girlfriend I'm 6 foot, we both know it's not true. Comes in 6'02", 208 pounds, 21 years old. If we're looking at the production profile, what I really like with Quentin Johnston is the man broke out right away at TCU. His true freshman season, 60 receiving yards per game, 31% of his team's passing offense. His sophomore year, 79 receiving yards per game. That's good for 33% of the offense. And his junior season, about the same. So Quentin Johnston never really had that true dominant level season. He was just very good from start to bottom the second that he was a freshman all the way till his junior season. I'm going to be moving him ahead of Addison strictly because of Addison's size. And we can go right there. 5'11", 173. Now, we knew he was going to be slight, and nobody came out here thought that he was a beefy boy. I mean, he's not going to weigh a ton. We already knew he was skinny, but 5'11", 173 is pretty damn small, especially if we're going to go through and look at his speed, because if you're going to be this small, fine. I mean, you can get away with it if you're going to be Devonta Smith in college. Like, I think that's going to be someone that a lot of people are bringing up, and I will let you know, I was drafting Devonta Smith in almost every single rookie draft in 2021 because people were panicking that he did not weigh enough. People were sitting there going, he's 6 foot, 170. He's going to get broken at the NFL level. And what I looked at when we were looking at Devonta Smith is a player that was at Alabama and accounted for 50% of their receiving yards on a per game basis. Let's pull this up just to remind you the level of production that Devonta Smith had in college if we're wanting to go through and try to look at an outlier type scenario here with Jordan Addison. The man at Alabama had over 1,800 receiving yards. He had 23 receiving touchdowns. Okay? So yes, I am still keeping Jordan Addison in tier 1. And yes, this is not everything. But just because someone like Devonta Smith overcame the lack of size, it doesn't mean we should automatically assume that Jordan Addison will be able to. Now, clearly, I still have Addison as a tier 1 wide receiver. I only dropped him one spot only. But I do think we have to make the adjustment. If we're looking at the production profile compared to Quentin Johnston as well, I mean, yes, his sophomore season, he actually has significantly more receiving yards per game. 113 receiving yards per game before he transfers. But keep in mind, he played in a phenomenal offense. So he actually accounted for 33% of his team's passing yards on a per game basis, the same level of Quentin Johnston. Johnston actually had a better freshman season, a better junior season as well. So if we're going to be looking at these market share numbers, Addison won the Blitnikoff. Addison at the same time was just a monster in his sophomore year. So previously coming into this, I had Addison at 2. I do think we need to move him to 3 though. I'm still drafting him, but I would be lying if I said that this wasn't a bad day. Now let's drop it down a tier. Let's go over to Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers stayed all 4 years in college. I don't necessarily think he's going to get to the next level and then be able to continue to progress and ever be the best wide receiver in this class. I really think that the number 1 wide receiver in this class will be one of those top 3 guys. With Flowers, he comes out. He's 5'9", 182, not great size. A 4.42 40-yard dash. So you're getting the athleticism that you're looking for. And then if we're going over to his production profile, what I do like to see with Zay Flowers is he did continuously get better his entire time in college. His market share numbers go from 15% as a freshman, 28% as a sophomore, 33% junior, 36% senior. So he gets better every single season. He is an adequate athlete. He's probably going to go borderline round 1, early round 2 of the NFL draft. So I like Zay Flowers. I just don't see him ever being in line with those top tier wide receivers, because if we're going to be looking at their sophomore level seasons, Zay Flowers was at a worse program than all 3 of those guys. And all 3 of those guys were sitting with the market share number of about 33%, while Zay Flowers is down at 28%, like I said, at a worse school. Now, going down to our next tier, we're going to be looking at Josh Downs. Let me know what you're thinking here, okay? Because this is a wide receiver that the production pops off the page. 40% market share numbers as a sophomore. Over 100 receiving yards per game, accounting for 40% of his team's passing offense. 4-star player going to UNC. We all knew he was going to be small, right? Everybody knew it. But he does come in 5'9", 171. I don't know if I'm getting a little burnt here, because I will be the first person to admit I may or may not have been drafting Rondale Moore. Back in the day, I may have been ignoring the people that were extremely smart, saying that Rondale Moore was 5'7", he wasn't going to be able to overcome his size. It doesn't matter how good he was at Purdue. The NFL game was different. I ignored them. I drafted Rondale, and I was burned. So I'm a little bit hesitant with Downs. I will say for a damn fact, where you could potentially be excited about Josh Downs would be in a deep dynasty league where you're starting 11 or more players. So you're going to have to go very deep and get someone that has a high ceiling. And you are going to be looking at a full point per reception format. The worst place to be drafting Josh Downs is like on Underdog Fantasy, where it's best ball and it's only a half PPR league where touchdowns are going to be driving the majority of production and the majority of value. You don't want Josh Downs in non-PPR. You don't want him in half PPR. You're going to need him in full PPR if he wants to have value. At 6, we're going to have Jalen Hyatt. This is a wide receiver that you needed to be fast. Okay, he's going to win with the deep ball coming out of Tennessee. Very productive wide receiver this past season. 105 receiving yards per game as a true junior. Couple different things. We've talked about this a ton. I will guarantee you Hyatt will go higher in the NFL draft than where Josh Downs will. 100%, there's no shot Josh Downs goes above Jalen Hyatt in the NFL draft, and Josh Downs won't be nearly as effective of an NFL wide receiver as Jalen Hyatt. But Hyatt will provide that deep ball ability, stretch NFL defenses that will be more valuable for his NFL team than potentially his fantasy team. So if you're going to be looking at the production profile, what's very concerning is his sophomore year does nothing. Doesn't even hit 10% of the receiving yards on a per game basis at Tennessee. Didn't break out till his junior season. He was very good his junior year. Don't get me wrong. And he plays along Cedric Tillman, someone else that should be drafted in this year's NFL draft relatively high. Should be a day 2-ish pick. I don't know. I just think that this is probably the exact opposite of, say, the Josh Downs in the same tier, right? Where if you're playing in a dynasty league where you have to start 11 guys, full PPR, there you're going to go Josh Downs. If you're on underdog where it's best ball, half PPR, and you just want some of those massive swings one way or another, there maybe instead you actually go with the Jalen Hyatt. Now, going over to our next guy, we're going to be looking at Kayshon Boutte at 7. So wide receiver that honestly may go down for us a little bit more. I mean, this is our initial reaction here. And you know what? F it. We're going to move him down. We're going to move him actually behind Marvin Mims. We'll get to Boutte in just one second. Let's go over and look at Marvin Mims. This is a wide receiver that very similar to Boutte. Debbie Darling, okay? Going to OU after his true freshman season. People were pumped. This is a wide receiver that actually had about a 17% market share number as a true freshman at OU. He was a very high pedigree player. And then you're looking at him improving going into his sophomore season, 20% team market share. Not great. We are really looking for him to get to that 33% mark, similar to Addison, Johnston, JSN. And then his junior season, he does get better. 83 receiving yards per game. He's sitting there with a 32% team market share number. If we're going to be looking at his speed, he ran a 4.38 with Marvin Mims. That's the selling point. Usually, I don't really care too much about the 40-yard dash. Usually at wide receiver, I think it's almost useless, except if you're looking at wide receivers that profile to be speedsters, that are supposed to win with speed. There's some recent examples of wide receivers that I actually did care about the 40-yard dash with, guys like James Washington and Dyami Brown. And the reason that we knocked them significantly when they got to the NFL Combine and ran a very slow 40 time is because in college, they ran with their deep ball ability. They ran past the safeties. They won in jump ball contested scenarios. And if you don't have speed, you can't translate that to the NFL. So with that wide receiver prototype, it was important for Mims to come in and actually show that he does have the speed to back it up, which he did. Now going over to Boutte at 8, very similar to Mims. He had the pedigree, very similar to Mims as well. He did not really do much to drive confidence later on in his career in college. With Boutte, I mean, we already know there are some off the field rumors, and now we are throwing on the scenario that, hell, he does not test that well. His 40-yard dash time, 4.5, that's fine, but he was a little bit smaller than we assumed, 5'11", 195. I mean, he can't jump over a little tree log on the ground. I don't know what we were saying there. But anyway, I mean, what you're really looking at is his sophomore season where he was right there with those other guys in tier 1, 33% of his team market share numbers. He actually was the #1 wide receiver at LSU as a true freshman as well, which is great, but he's not good his junior season. We have some possible off the field concerns and now some possible testing concerns. He's a little bit smaller than we thought. Not great all around. Now, going over to 9, we're going to be looking at Rashee Rice. I mean, this is a wide receiver that comes in, runs a 4.51. It's fine. The issue is he's going to be an older player. I mean, you really don't see that top-level production until his senior season. Coming out of SMU, we see this every single year. You have your small school players that dominate their senior seasons because they're playing lackluster competition. And if you imagine it, if you're Rashee Rice at SMU, you're a future NFL wide receiver at 22 years old, about to be 23, going up against 18-year-old kids that have no shot to ever sniff the NFL. It's not fair. So if we're going to be looking at his 35% team market share numbers his senior season, we need to be adjusting those to a great extent, in my opinion, given the context that he put up that production with. So it's not too impressive. Dropping down, I didn't know who to throw in at 10 here. I think we will definitely give these guys at the bottom end of the draft more time as we get closer and closer to May. I'm going to be doing deep dives on these guys, and I'm not going to be surprised at all if these rankings change, especially rankings 7 through 10. But as of today, I'll have Xavier Hutchinson here. This is a wide receiver that, in my mind, is very similar to Rice. He's very old, about to be 23. You don't see the dominance until his senior season. I may actually like him a little bit more than Rice in terms of his just raw numbers with his profile. The issue and why I'm giving Rice the little bit of an edge is just because the NFL draft capital. If you're going to NFL mock draft database right now, you're going to see that most mock drafters have Rice getting relatively good capital, possibly being a second round pick, most likely being a third, where Hutchinson looks like he could fall to day 3. So there's inherently a little more risk there. But I think that's all I have for you. If you enjoyed this video, please go down there, drop a like, subscribe if you play Dynasty. If you want to draft one of these rookies today, if you want to get in a fantasy football draft with me, you can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the comment section and in the description. But thank you again. I appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day and really hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow.